Empire's finest arrived, but humans just smiled and annihilated them all apart. 3 days after the battle, Commander Vroth stood aboard a human medical ship. The vessel was clean and bright, nothing like the dark, industrial Vakrothian warships he was used to. Human doctors moved between beds, treating wounded alien soldiers with the same care they would show their own people. Vroth's injuries were minor. Burns on his scales, a broken arm, damage to one of his eyes. The human doctors had fixed everything within hours. They used technology that healed without pain, without scars. They treated their enemies with more kindness than the Empire treated its own troops. "Commander Vroth," a voice said. He turned to see a human woman in a military uniform approaching. She was small like most humans, but she carried herself with absolute authority. "I'm Admiral G1. We need to talk." Vroth followed her to a private room. Inside, several other humans waited. He recognized them from the battle data. Commander Hyuk, who had defended Luna Base. Captain Minji, who had commanded the defense platforms. Lieutenant Soman, the young pilot who had destroyed so many ships. Scientist Do-hyun, whose weapons had torn the Vakrothian fleet apart. "Sit," G1 said, gesturing to a chair. Vroth sat. He felt strange sitting in a room with his enemies, but they weren't treating him as a prisoner. They were treating him as a guest. "The Vakrothian Empire is finished," G1 said without preamble. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your leadership is dead. Your people have no way to enforce their rule over the species you conquered." Vroth nodded slowly. He knew this already. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years had fallen in a single day. "What will happen to us?" he asked. "Will you execute us? Enslave us? Take revenge for what we tried to do?" G1 shook her head. "No, we're not the Empire. We don't punish defeated enemies. You will be treated fairly. Your crew will be allowed to return home eventually. You will live." Vroth felt relief flood through him. "Thank you. But," G1 continued, "now there are conditions. The Empire is dissolved. All conquered territories will be freed. Any species you enslaved will be liberated. The Vakrothian people will never again build a military fleet. You will not threaten other species. These terms are not negotiable." "I understand," Vroth said, "but I have no authority to agree to such terms. I'm just a commander." "Then we'll speak to whoever has authority," Captain Minji said. "We've already sent ships to your homeworld. They're broadcasting the footage of this battle. Your people will see what happened here. They'll understand that the old empire is gone." Vroth thought about his people watching their proud fleet destroyed by a single planet. The shame would be unbearable. They won't accept this easily. "They don't have to accept it," Commander Hyuk said. His voice was matter-of-fact. "It's simply the new reality. The Empire ended the moment your fleet arrived at Earth. Everything after that was just details." Scientist Do-hyun leaned forward, his expression curious rather than hostile. "Commander, we've been analyzing your technology. It's impressive in some ways. Your plasma reactors are very efficient, but you've been using the same basic designs for thousands of years. Why didn't you advance?" Vroth considered the question. "Why would we? Our technology was sufficient to conquer everyone we met. We had no reason to improve." "That was your mistake," Do-hyun said. "Humanity never stops improving. We can't. It's not in our nature. Even during our worst wars, we were developing new technology. We never became comfortable. We never stopped innovating." Lieutenant Soman spoke for the first time. She looked even younger up close, barely more than a child. But her eyes were old. "Commander, did you ever wonder why all your conquests were easy?" Vroth frowned. "What do you mean?" "Every species you fought surrendered quickly. None of them put up a real fight. Doesn't that seem strange?" "They were wise," Vroth said. "They saw our power and chose life over death." Soman shook her head. "They were peaceful. They didn't understand war. They had never faced a real military threat before. So when you arrived, they panicked and surrendered." She stood and walked to a window showing Earth in the distance. "But humans understand war. We've lived with it for our entire history. We know that sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes surrender isn't an option. Sometimes you have to stand up to bullies even if they're bigger than you. And you won," Vroth said quietly. "You stood up to us and you won." "We won because we were prepared," Admiral G1 said. "And we were prepared because we know what we are. We're not peaceful explorers. We're warriors who learned to control our violence. We're predators who decided to protect instead of hunt. But we never forgot how to fight." She pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. "This is what happens next. Earth will take responsibility for galactic security. We'll protect species from threats like the Empire. We'll police the stars. We'll make sure what happened to those 19 civilizations never happens again. You'll become the new Empire, Vroth said bitterly. Conquerors replacing conquerors. No, Commander Hayek said firmly. We'll become protectors. There's a difference. We don't want to rule anyone. We don't want slaves or tribute. We just want to make sure the galaxy is safe. Captain Minji added, We've already made contact with 14 species who were part of your empire. We've offered them independence and protection. All of them accepted. They're grateful the empire is gone. Vroth felt shame burn through him. The empire had always claimed they brought order to chaos. They had believed they were making the galaxy better. But the species they conquered didn't see it that way. They had been prisoners, not citizens. I'm sorry, Vroth said, for what the empire did, for the suffering we caused. I didn't see it before. I thought we were bringing civilization to primitive species, but we were just bullies with big ships. Admiral Jiwan's expression softened slightly. That's the first step, Commander. Understanding what you did wrong. The second step is making it right. How? Vroth asked. How can we make this right? By helping us, Scientist Do-hyun said. You know the locations of all the Empire's conquests. You know which species were enslaved, which planets were occupied. Help us free them. Guide us to the survivors. Show us where the Empire's weapons are hidden. Vroth nodded slowly. I can do that. I will do that. If it helps repair even a small part of the damage we caused. Lieutenant Soman returned to her seat. There's something else you should know, Commander. We've been broadcasting the battle footage across the galaxy. Every species with radio telescopes has seen it. They all know what happened here. Why? Vroth asked. Why let everyone see your weapons? Doesn't that make you vulnerable? No, Jiwan said with that same small smile. It makes us safe. Everyone knows now what happens to species that threaten Earth. Everyone knows what humanity is capable of. We won't have to fight another battle like this because no one will be foolish enough to attack us. Commander Hyuk pulled up more data. We've received first contact requests from 47 species in the last 3 days. They're all seeking alliance with Earth, protection, trade agreements, cultural exchanges. The galaxy wants to be our friends now. Because they're afraid of you, Vroth said. Partially, Captain Minji admitted, but also because we showed restraint. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. We could have killed everyone. But we stopped when you surrendered. We showed mercy. That matters, Vroth understood. The humans had proven they were strong enough to destroy anyone, but disciplined enough not to. That combination of power and control made them trustworthy. Species would ally with Earth not just because they feared human weapons, but because they trusted human judgment. What about me? Vroth asked. What happens to me now? You'll help us rebuild, Admiral Jiwan said. You'll work with our diplomatic teams to contact the species the Empire conquered. You'll help us understand Vakrothian culture so we can guide your people toward a better future, and eventually you'll go home. As a failure, Vroth said. The commander who lost the Empire. Or as the commander who helped build something better, Jiwan countered. That choice is yours. Vroth thought about that. He could return home in shame, a symbol of defeat. Or he could return as someone who helped save his people from their own worst instincts. The second path was harder, but it was the right one. I'll help you, he said. Whatever you need. Good. Jiwan stood and the others followed. Then we have a lot of work to do. 6 months later, Admiral Jiwan stood on the observation deck of a new space station orbiting Earth. The station served as humanity's diplomatic center, a place where species from across the galaxy could meet and talk. Today, representatives from 20 different civilizations had gathered for a conference on galactic security. Commander Hyuk approached, carrying a datapad. The conference is going well. Everyone has agreed to the Defense Pact. Earth will coordinate security, but each species contributes what they can. Good, Jiwan said. What about the Vakrothian territories? All liberated, Hyuk reported. The last slave camp was closed yesterday. 19 species are free now. They're building their own governments, choosing their own paths. Captain Minji joined them, looking tired but satisfied. The defense platforms are operational. We've installed them in 12 systems so far. If anyone tries to conquer or threaten these species, we'll know immediately. Empire's finest arrived, but humans just smiled and annihilated them. All Part 4 Commander Vroth sat in the command chair that once belonged to the Supreme Warlord. The chair felt too large now. The entire flagship felt empty. Most of the senior command staff were dead, vaporized when their reality fracture device exploded. He was in charge by default, the highest-ranking officer still alive. Around him, the bridge crew waited for orders. They were young, most of them. They had joined the Empire's fleet expecting glory and conquest. Now they faced extinction at the hands of a species they had never heard of until today. "What do we do, Commander?" his tactical officer asked. The officer's voice shook slightly. He was trying to hide his fear, but failing. Froth looked at his screens. The human fleet waited in perfect formation. They weren't advancing. They weren't attacking. They were simply there, a wall of ships between the Vakrothians and any hope of escape. Every simulation his computer ran ended the same way. Total defeat. 0% survival rate. We could fight, Froth said quietly. We still have nearly 2,000 ships. We could charge their line. Some of us might break through. His tactical officer nodded, but they both knew it was a lie. None of them would break through. The humans had barely used their weapons yet. They had disabled hyperspace. They had contained the Empire's ultimate weapon. They had destroyed almost half the fleet without taking a single casualty. On the other hand, surrender meant the end of the Empire. 10,000 years of conquest would end with them. The Vakrothian people would never forgive such shame. History would remember them as the cowards who bowed to primitives from a backwater planet. Roth closed all four eyes. Pride versus survival. Honor versus reality. It should have been an easy choice. But the weight of 10 millennia of tradition pressed down on him like a physical force. "Commanders," he said, opening a channel to all remaining ships. "This is Vroth. I need your counsel. Should we surrender or fight?" The responses came quickly. Some argued for surrender. Others demanded battle. The fleet was divided. Young officers wanted to live. Old warriors wanted to die with honor. Everyone understood that survival and honor could not coexist today. While the Vakrothians debated, Admiral Jiwan watched from her flagship. She knew what they were discussing. She knew the choice they faced. She had given similar orders herself once, long ago, during the final war. Stand down or fight to the death. She had chosen to stand down. That choice had saved humanity. "They're going to refuse," Commander Hayek said from Luna Base. He was monitoring the alien communications, using translation programs to understand their debate. "Pride won't let them surrender. The Empire has never backed down." "I know," Jiwan replied. She felt a strange sadness. She didn't want to destroy them. She wanted them to surrender. Humanity had no desire for genocide. But if the Vakrothians chose death, she would grant them that choice. Captain Minji spoke from her defense platform. "Admiral, if they attack, what are your orders?" Jiwan considered carefully. "If they surrender, we accept. We take them into custody. We treat them well. We show them that humanity can be merciful." She paused. "But if they attack, we hold nothing back. We show them everything we can do. We make it quick, but we make it complete. No half measures. No warnings. We end it." "Understood," Minji said. Lieutenant Soman listened from her fighter. She hoped the aliens would surrender. She had killed enough today. 17 battle cruisers with her squadron. Each one had crew members, people with families and hopes and dreams. She didn't enjoy killing. She was just very good at it. "All fighters, stand ready," she ordered. "But do not fire unless ordered. Let them make their choice." Scientist Do-hyun watched from Earth. His instruments measured the energy signatures of both fleets. The humans were ready. Every weapon was charged. Every system was online. They could unleash destruction on a scale the galaxy had never seen. He hoped they wouldn't have to. "Professor," his assistant said nervously, "if we have to fight, will we use everything?" Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Everything." The Admiral was clear. "No half measures. But that means—" The assistant couldn't finish the sentence. "Yes," Do-hyun said quietly. "It means weapons we've never tested in real combat. Entropy accelerators, probability inverters, causality weapons. We'll use them all." He looked at his screens, at the beautiful equations that described such terrible power. "We spent 2 centuries developing these weapons. Today we'll learn if they work." Aboard the Vakrothian flagship, Commander Vroth reached his decision. The debate had gone nowhere. Half his commanders wanted surrender. Half wanted to fight. He was the leader now. The choice was his alone. He thought about the Empire. 10,000 years of glory. 47 galaxies conquered. Countless species brought under Vacrothian rule. All of it would end with his decision. But he also thought about his crew. Young people who deserved to see their families again. Veterans who had earned a peaceful retirement. All of them would die if he chose wrong. Vroth made his choice. All ships, he said. Prepare for battle. We will show these humans what the Empire truly is. We will fight with honor. We will die with pride. Today we prove that the Vacrothians do not surrender. His bridge crew straightened in their chairs. Some looked relieved. Others looked terrified. All of them obeyed. Charge all weapons, Vroth ordered. Plot intercept course for their flagship. All ships will follow my lead. We attack in 1 minute. The Vacrothian fleet began to move. Nearly 2,000 warships turned toward Earth. Their weapons powered up. Their engines burned bright. They had no illusions about victory. This was a suicide charge, but it was a glorious suicide charge, and that was enough. Admiral Jiwan saw the enemy fleet begin their attack run. She felt no anger, no satisfaction, just a cold, professional acceptance of what had to happen next. All ships, she said calmly. The enemy has chosen battle. Execute attack plan Omega-7, authorization G1993. Across the human fleet, systems activated. Not defensive systems this time. Offensive systems. Weapons that humanity had built but never used. Technology that existed only in theory until this moment. Commander Hayek initiated the first weapon system from Luna Base. The entropy accelerators. They didn't fire bullets or beams. They fired time itself. The Vacrothian ships in the front line suddenly aged. Millions of years compressed into seconds. Metal corroded. Structures weakened. Ships that were new and strong became old and fragile. Then they simply fell apart, disintegrating into dust. Captain Minji activated her platform's probability inverters. These weapons changed chance itself. The Vacrothian weapons that were firing all malfunctioned. Missiles that should have flown straight suddenly turned back toward their own ships. Plasma cannons that should have fired forward discharged backward. The aliens found themselves attacking themselves. Probability twisted until their own weapons became their enemies. Lieutenant Salmon led her fighters in a new attack pattern. This time they didn't use singularity charges. They used dimensional razors, weapons that cut ships out of normal space entirely. Her fighters flew past the alien vessels, leaving reality-warping fields behind them. The Vacrothian ships simply vanished, displaced into dimensions where matter couldn't exist. Scientist Do-hyun activated the orbital weapons platforms hidden throughout the solar system. Information cascade bombs deployed. These weapons attacked not the ships themselves, but the computers controlling them. They flooded alien systems with paradoxes and logical impossibilities. The Vacrothian computers tried to process contradictory information and failed catastrophically. Ships lost helm control. Weapons systems shut down. Life support failed. The vessels drifted helplessly. More human weapons engaged. Gravity well generators created localized singularities that crushed entire formations. Causality weapons fired shots that struck their targets before being fired, making defense impossible. Phase disruptors made solid matter intangible, and Vacrothian ships fell apart as their own atoms stopped touching each other. The alien fleet was dying. Not in glorious battle, not in heroic combat. They were being systematically annihilated by weapons they couldn't understand, couldn't counter, couldn't even see coming. Ship after ship vanished, exploded, collapsed, or simply stopped existing. Commander Vroth watched his fleet dissolve. In 5 minutes, he had lost 1,000 ships. The remaining vessels were scattered, disorganized, helpless. The humans weren't even targeting them anymore. The weapons were firing automatically, eliminating threats with cold efficiency. All ships, Vroth said, his voice defeated. Cease attack. Power down all weapons. We surrender, but it was too late. Admiral G1 had given her orders. No half measures. The attack continued. Vroth screamed into his communicator. We surrender. Please stop firing. We surrender. Finally, the human weapons went silent. The sudden quiet was shocking. Moments ago, space had been filled with energy discharges and explosions. Now there was only silence and the drift of debris. Of the 3,000 ships that had arrived at Earth, fewer than 300 remained. And those 300 were damaged, crippled, their weapons offline and their systems failing. Admiral G1's voice came across the communication channel. Commander Vroth, you chose to attack after being offered terms. You made your choice. This is the result. Empire's finest arrived, but humans just smiled and annihilated them all. Part 3 Commander Vroth stared at the communication screen showing Admiral Jiwan's face. Her expression was calm. That calmness terrified him more than any weapon. She looked at him the way a scientist might look at an interesting specimen. Not with hate, with curiosity. Why? Vroth asked. His translator made his voice sound hollow. Why do you fight like this? You could have surrendered. We would have let most of your people live. Instead, you slaughter us. What kind of species are you? Admiral Jiwan's smile returned. That same small smile that had appeared when she first refused the Empire's demands. You didn't do your research, Commander. That's your real mistake. You came to our system without learning about us first. You assumed we were like the others you conquered. We're not. Then what are you? Vroth demanded. Let me show you. Jiwan nodded to her communications officer. Across space, a data transmission broadcast directly to every Vakrothian ship. Their computers received it automatically. When the alien crews saw what the humans were sending, they wished they hadn't. The transmission showed Earth's history, not the peaceful parts, not the art or music or culture. The humans sent recordings of their wars, thousands of years of humans fighting humans. The images were horrifying. The Vakrothians watched cities burn from primitive explosives. They saw armies clash with swords and spears, leaving millions dead. They watched as humans developed guns, then better guns, then automatic weapons that could kill hundreds in minutes. The death toll kept rising. Century after century, humans found new ways to destroy each other. Then came the nuclear age. The Vakrothians watched in shock as humans split atoms and turned cities into ash. They saw the mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They watched as humans built bombs that could destroy entire countries. Thousands of bombs, enough to end all life on their planet. They used these weapons on themselves, Vroth whispered, on their own kind. But the transmission wasn't finished. It showed biological weapons next. Humans engineering diseases to kill other humans, plagues that could wipe out populations, viruses that ate flesh, bacteria that destroyed organs. Humanity had weaponized nature itself. The images continued. Nanite swarms that consumed everything they touched. Antimatter bombs that made nuclear weapons look weak. Genetic weapons that targeted specific ethnic groups. Humans had spent 10,000 years developing better ways to kill other humans. Captain Minji watched the transmission from her defense platform. She had seen this history before, had studied it in military academy. Every human soldier learned about their species' violent past. It wasn't something they were proud of. It was simply what they were. We almost destroyed ourselves 12 times, Minji said to her crew. 12 times we came to the edge of extinction. Nuclear war, biological plagues, nanite apocalypse, climate collapse. Each time we pulled back at the last second. On Luna Base, Commander Hyuk added his own commentary to the transmission. His voice was steady, factual, like a teacher explaining a difficult lesson. Every weapon you possess, we invented something worse. Then we used it on ourselves. Your plasma cannons, we developed fusion weapons 500 years ago. Your graviton beams, we've been manipulating gravity for 3 centuries. Your antimatter missiles, we use antimatter to power our cities. The Vakrothian crews listened in growing horror. This species was insane. They had the power to destroy themselves completely, and they had come close to doing it repeatedly. Yet somehow they had survived. How? Scientist Do-hyun's voice joined the broadcast. He spoke from his laboratory on Earth, surrounded by equipment the aliens couldn't understand. We achieved spatial manipulation trying to find better ways to strike our enemies, he explained. His tone was almost cheerful, as if discussing an interesting puzzle. We needed weapons that could bypass any defense, so we learned to fold space. We developed quantum weapons because we kept building better shields. We created reality anchors because our weapons kept accidentally tearing holes in space-time during our wars. The transmission showed more recent history. Humans fighting on Mars using weapons that altered gravity, space battles around Jupiter's moons, ships phasing in and out of reality, underground wars where armies fought in pocket dimensions. Humanity had turned physics itself into a weapon, but then the images changed. The Vakrothians saw something unexpected. They saw humans stopping. The wars ended. Not because they ran out of weapons, not because they killed each other. They stopped because they chose to. The last great human conflict had been 150 years ago. The final war, humans called it. 2 massive alliances, each with enough firepower to sterilize the solar system. They had stood on the edge of total annihilation. Their weapons were armed. Their fingers were on the triggers, and then someone had said no. The transmission showed the moment. A single admiral standing down her fleet. A single general pulling back his armies. Others followed. Within days, both sides were negotiating. Within months, they had peace. Within years, they had unity. We unified not because we learned peace, Commander Hayuk explained. We unified because we ran out of ourselves to fight. We had conquered every planet in our system. We had weapons that could destroy stars. We had nowhere left to test our capabilities except on each other, and we realized that if we continued, we would all die. Admiral Jiwan's voice took over the narration. So we made a choice. We would stop fighting each other. We would focus our efforts outward toward the stars. We would prepare for the day when something might threaten all of humanity. The transmission showed the next 150 years. Humans building ships. Humans developing new technologies. Humans preparing. Always preparing for what? They didn't know. But they would be ready when it came. And then you arrived, Jiwan said. Her smile was wider now. Thank you for that. The meaning was clear. The Vicrothians had given humanity what they needed. An enemy, a threat, a reason to use all the weapons they had built, all the tactics they had developed, all the skills they had honed over 10,000 years of constant warfare. Lieutenant Somin added her thoughts from her fighter. She was young, but her voice carried absolute confidence. My grandmother fought in the final war. She told me about the weapons they used. The reality bombs, the causality weapons, the entropy accelerators. We still have all of them. We just haven't had anyone to use them on. She paused, and the Vicrothians could hear the smile in her voice. Until now. Commander Voroth felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of warfare. True fear. These humans weren't peaceful explorers who happened to have good weapons. They were born warriors who had spent millennia perfecting the art of destruction. And the Vicrothian Empire had walked into their territory and threatened them. The transmission showed one final image. It was Earth, blue and beautiful, floating peacefully in space. The planet looked serene, harmless. But the Vicrothians now knew the truth. That peaceful world was home to the most dangerous species in the galaxy, a species that had turned warfare into science, violence into art, destruction into mathematics. Every species you conquered was peaceful, Admiral Jiwan said. They developed space travel for exploration. They built civilizations based on cooperation. They created art and culture and philosophy. They were scientists and artists and dreamers. Her expression hardened. We're not like them. We built civilization despite being a species that loves warfare. We reached the stars not to explore but to find better places to build weapons. We developed advanced science not for knowledge but for better ways to kill. We are what happens when a violent species survives long enough to become advanced. Captain Minji spoke again, her voice soft but clear. You expected us to be afraid of your empire. You expected us to surrender when you showed us your power. But we've seen power before. We've wielded it ourselves. Your fleet doesn't scare us. Your weapons don't impress us. Your threats don't move us. Commander Hayuk added, we've spent 10,000 years preparing to fight ourselves. Every defensive system we built was designed to stop human weapons. Every offensive system we created was made to break through human shields. We are very, very good at war because we practiced it constantly. Scientist Do-hyun's voice carried a note of academic interest. From a purely scientific perspective, you made an excellent test case. We've been able to validate our defensive theories. Our quantum weapons performed exactly as predicted. The spatial folding worked perfectly. The reality anchors held under stress. You've helped us prove that our systems function as designed. The Vicrothians realized the terrible truth. They hadn't just been defeated. They had been studied, analyzed, used as test subjects for human weapons. The entire battle had been an experiment to humanity, a chance to see if their theories worked in practice. Admiral Jiwan delivered the final message. You came to conquer Earth. You expected to add us to your empire like you added 19 other species. But those species were peaceful. We are not. Those species were unprepared. We have been preparing for 10,000 years. The transmission showed the human fleet in full, not just the defensive platforms and fighters the Vicrothians had seen. Behind them were thousands more ships. Weapons platforms. Empire's finest arrived, but humans just smiled and annihilated them all. Part 1. The stars above Earth disappeared. One moment they were there, bright and constant. The next moment, darkness covered them. 3,000 massive warships emerged from empty space, each one larger than any human city. They blocked out the light from distant suns. These were the ships of the Vakrothian Empire, and they had come to conquer. Commander Hugh stood in the control room of Luna Base, watching his screens fill with red warning signals. He had been drinking coffee when the alarm started. Now the cup sat forgotten on his desk, still steaming. His hands moved quickly across the holographic displays, counting the enemy vessels. 3,000. Maybe more. His team worked around him, their faces pale but focused. "Get me Admiral Jiwan," Hayuk said quietly. His voice was calm, but his heart beat faster. He had trained for this moment his entire career. Every human soldier had. They all knew that someday, something might come from the stars. Something hostile. On the other side of Earth's orbit, Captain Minji sat in the command chair of the defense platform called Sentinel. Her station was one of 50 that circled the planet, hidden among satellites and space debris. Each platform carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. She watched the alien ships arrange themselves in a battle formation that her computer recognized from old records. The Vakrothians used the same pattern they had used to destroy 19 other civilizations. All weapons charged. Her second officer reported. Waiting for orders. Minji nodded but said nothing. She would wait for the admiral. Earth's defense had one rule. No one fired without authorization. Discipline would win battles. Panic would lose them. Admiral Jiwan received the alert aboard her flagship, the Indomitable. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. For 30 years she had commanded Earth's United Defense Fleet, preparing for a threat that might never come. Now it was here, and she felt strangely calm. Perhaps it was relief. The waiting was over. "Show me," she said. The main screen displayed the alien fleet. Jiwan studied each ship class, noting their positions, their weapon ports, their engine signatures. Her tactical computer matched them against every battle the Vakrothians had ever fought. The database was complete. Humanity had been watching the Empire for decades, learning, studying, preparing. "They're hailing us," her communications officer said. "Put it through." The screen changed. A massive alien face appeared, covered in dark scales with 4 glowing eyes. The supreme warlord of the Vakrothian Empire spoke in a voice that rattled the speakers. "Humans of Earth, you will surrender your planet within 1 rotation of your sun. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your military will be dissolved. Your people will serve the Empire or they will die. This is not a negotiation. This is your only chance to survive." The alien played recordings. Yuan watched worlds burn. She saw cities turn to glass. She saw populations herded into camps, 19 civilizations, all destroyed because they refused to surrender. The Vakrothians wanted humans to see this. They wanted fear. Jiwan let the recording play to the end. Then she leaned forward in her chair and smiled. "We have reviewed your demands," she said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Our answer is no." The alien commander stared at her. All 4 eyes widened. In 10,000 years, no species had ever refused the Empire. None had dared. The warlord's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then you have chosen death," the alien said. "Perhaps," Jiwan replied. Her smile never wavered. "Or perhaps you have." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Alert all stations. Execute Defense Pattern Omega. Authorization G1773. Across human space, systems activated." On Luna Base, Commander Hayek's screens changed from red to blue. The defensive grid came online. Captain Minji felt her station hum as massive generators powered up. Lieutenant Sumin, sitting in her fighter craft in a hidden bay beneath Mars, received her launch orders. In his laboratory on Earth, scientist Do-hyun watched the alien fleet through his telescopes. He had been waiting for this moment too. His entire life had been spent developing weapons that he hoped would never be used. Now he would see if they worked. "Fascinating," he said to his assistant. "Their ships use plasma reactors. Very powerful but very unstable. And their shields operate on a single frequency band. They've never needed to defend against multiple attack types. Is that good for us?" his assistant asked. Do-hyun smiled. "Yes, very good." Above Earth, the Vakrothian fleet began to move. The supreme warlord was angry now. The human smile had insulted him. Her refusal had shocked him. He would make an example of this planet. He would make humanity's destruction so complete that no other species would ever dare refuse the Empire again. Target their moon. The warlord commanded. Destroy it. Let them watch their sky fall. 1,000 plasma cannons charged. Each one could melt continents. Together they could vaporize a moon. The energy readings climbed higher and higher. In 5 seconds they would fire. Commander Hyuk saw the energy spike on his screens. He knew what was coming. Luna Base, his home for 5 years, would be the first target. He should have been afraid. Instead, he felt excited. Finally, he could test all the systems they had built. Activate spatial fold on my mark, he said. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Vakrothian fleet fired. A wall of superheated plasma crossed the distance between the fleet and the moon in less than a second. Enough energy to destroy a celestial body struck Luna Base. Nothing happened. The plasma hit empty space and dispersed harmlessly. Luna Base remained exactly where it was, undamaged. Commander Hyuk's defensive grid had folded space itself. The alien weapons had struck a point that didn't exist in normal reality. The moon hadn't moved. The attack had simply missed a target that was right in front of them. On the Vakrothian flagship, alarms blared. Sensor operators shouted in confusion. The Supreme Warlord stared at his screens, unable to understand what had just happened. Fire again, he roared. All weapons! But Admiral G1 was already giving her own orders. Lieutenant Soman, she said calmly, you may begin your attack run. Beneath Mars, fighter bays opened. Hundreds of small craft emerged, so tiny compared to the massive alien warships that they barely registered on sensors. Lieutenant Somin led her squadron toward the enemy fleet. She was young, only 25, but she was the best pilot humanity had ever produced. Remember your training, she said to her pilots. Phase on my mark. Target their reactors. Make every shot count. The fighters accelerated. The Vakrothians saw them coming and laughed. What could such small vessels do against ships that could destroy planets? They didn't even bother to target them. That was their first mistake. Soman's fighter approached the nearest battlecruiser. At the last moment, she activated her phase drive. Her ship didn't slow down or turn away. It passed directly through the aliens' shields as if they weren't there. For one fraction of a second, her fighter existed in the same space as the enemy ship's reactor core. She fired a single weapon, a singularity charge no bigger than a marble. Then her ship phased back to normal space and flew away. Behind her, the battlecruiser collapsed. The singularity charge created a tiny black hole inside the ship's reactor. The entire vessel, 5 kilometers long, compressed into a point smaller than an atom. Then it was gone, erased from existence. Soman watched 16 more battlecruisers die the same way. Her squadron worked with perfect precision. Phase through shields. Deploy singularity charge. Phase out. Watch the enemy disappear. The Vakrothian fleet was in chaos now. They had lost 17 ships in less than a minute. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had attacked with weapons the Empire had never seen. Admiral Jiwan watched the battle unfold on her screens. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The enemy was confused, disorganized, and frightened. Good. Fear would make them sloppy. She opened a channel to scientist Do Hyun. Professor, how are your observations? Excellent, Admiral, Do Hyun replied. He sounded pleased. Their technology is exactly as we predicted. We should have complete tactical data within the hour. Good. Continue monitoring. Jiwan sat back in her chair. The smile remained on her face. The Vakrothian Empire had conquered 47 galaxies. They had destroyed 19 civilizations. They had never been defeated. They had also never fought humans before. That was about to change. Empire's finest arrived, but humans just smiled and annihilated them all apart. The Vakrothian Supreme Warlord screamed orders at his crew. 17 battlecruisers were gone. Simply gone. No wreckage, no debris. Just empty space where massive warships had been moments before. His tactical officers scrambled to understand what had happened. Their computers showed impossible readings. The human fighters had passed through solid shields. Their weapons had destroyed ships from the inside. How? The warlord demanded. How did they penetrate our shields? No one had an answer. The Vakrothian Empire had conquered the galaxy using technology that was thousands of years old. Their shields had stopped every weapon ever fired at them. Until now. Commit half the fleet, the warlord ordered. Crush them. 1,500 warships moved forward. Their weapons ports glowed with charging energy. This would not be a warning shot. This would be total annihilation. They would turn Earth's entire solar system into dust. Commander Hugh watched them come. His screen showed the massive energy buildup. In 30 seconds, the aliens would fire enough weapons to sterilize every planet in the system. He touched his communication device. Captain Minji, they're coming to you. Are you ready? On the defense. Platform Sentinel. Captain Minji checked her systems one last time. Everything was green. All 50 platforms were charged and synchronized. She had waited her entire career for this moment. Ready, she said simply. The Vakrothian fleet fired. 10,000 plasma torpedoes launched at once. 5,000 graviton beams capable of crushing planets lanced across space. Antimatter missiles, each one powerful enough to destroy a continent, streaked toward their targets. The aliens had unleashed enough destruction to end civilizations. Minji pressed a single button. Earth's orbital defense network activated fully. But these weren't simple shields or barriers. The defensive grid used spatial folding technology that humanity had developed after decades of research. Space itself bent around the platforms. The alien weapons traveled through 11 dimensions. Their energy dispersed across realities that the Vakrothians didn't even know existed. Every torpedo missed. Every beam scattered harmlessly. Every missile detonated in empty space. The defense platforms didn't even shake. Captain Minji sat calmly in her chair, watching thousands of weapons fail to touch her. Their turn, she said. The 50 defense platforms fired simultaneously. But these were not ordinary weapons. They were quantum entanglement cannons, devices that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. Each platform targeted a different section of the alien fleet. The quantum beams didn't travel through space. They simply appeared at their targets, bypassing all distance and all shields. The beams touched the alien ships. Nothing visible happened at first. Then the ships began to change. Their hulls rippled like water. Metal turned to gas. Gas turned to energy. Energy dispersed into nothing. 100 Vakrothian warships simply dissolved, their atomic structures torn apart by weapons that attacked them on a quantum level. The warlord watched his fleet die. He couldn't comprehend it. The humans had defensive technology that made shields obsolete. They had weapons that ignored distance. This wasn't a battle. This was something else entirely. Retreat to maximum range, he ordered. His voice shook. All ships pull back. The Vakrothian fleet withdrew, leaving debris and radiation behind. They had lost over 900 ships. They hadn't destroyed a single human target. Not one. The Empire's finest warriors had been stopped by a species they had expected to surrender without a fight. Admiral Jiwan watched them retreat. She opened a channel to all her commanders. Status report. Commander Hayuk responded first. Luna base undamaged. All systems operational. 0 casualties. Captain Minji spoke next. All defense platforms functional. Ammunition reserves at 97%. 0 casualties. Lieutenant Soman reported from her fighter. Squadron fully operational. All pilots accounted for. 0 casualties. Jiwan nodded. Perfect. Not a single human had died. The alien fleet was in shambles, and humanity hadn't even deployed their full arsenal yet. Maintain positions, she ordered. They'll try something else. She was right. Aboard the Vakrothian flagship, the Supreme Warlord made a decision. He accessed the ship's most secure vault. Inside was a weapon the Empire had only used 3 times in their history. A weapon so terrible that even they feared it. The reality fracture device. Activate it, the Warlord commanded. I don't care what it costs. These humans must die. His officers hesitated. The reality fracture device didn't just destroy matter. It destroyed space-time itself. It created a sphere of non-existence that expanded until it consumed everything in the target system. They had used it to erase 3 civilizations completely. No survivors. No ruins. Nothing remained but empty space. Now! The Warlord roared. The device activated. Energy readings spiked to levels that made stars look dim. The weapon began to charge. It would take 3 minutes to reach full power. 3 minutes, and then Earth would simply cease to exist. Commander Hughes saw the energy signature immediately. His computers identified it within seconds. He had studied this weapon. Every human commander had. They knew the Vakrothians possessed it. They had hoped the Empire wouldn't be desperate enough to use it. Admiral, Hayuk said urgently. They've activated their reality disruptor. It's charging. Admiral Jiwan showed no emotion. She had expected this. She opened a secure channel to Earth. Professor Do-hyun, they've deployed the fracture device. In his laboratory, scientist Do-hyun smiled. He had been waiting for this. His life's work was about to be tested. He activated a communication device that connected him to a facility hidden deep beneath Earth's surface. This is Do-hyun. Authorization code Alpha 7. Activate the lunar defense system. Full power. Far away on Earth's moon, something incredible happened. The lunar surface began to crack. Massive sections of rock split apart and fell away. Beneath the natural surface, metal appeared. Gleaming, advanced, impossibly complex metal. The moon wasn't a moon. Not entirely. It was a weapon platform. Humans had been building it for 200 years, ever since they first ventured into space. They had disguised it perfectly, covering advanced technology with rock and dust. Every space agency, every government, every military commander knew about it. It was humanity's ultimate defense hidden in plain sight. Lieutenant So-min saw it from her fighter cockpit. By the stars, she whispered. It's beautiful. The false moon opened completely. Inside was a structure that dwarfed even the largest Vakrothian warship. Generators the size of cities hummed to life. Weapons arrays that could destroy planets powered up. This was humanity's answer to extinction-level threats. The Vakrothian fleet detected the energy surge. Their sensors overloaded trying to measure it. The Supreme Warlord stared at his screens in horror. What is that? He whispered. The moon fired. A single pulse of pure energy crossed the distance between Earth and the Vakrothian fleet in an instant. But the pulse didn't attack the alien ships. Instead, it washed over them, through them, around them. The aliens felt nothing. Then they tried to fire their reality fracture device. Nothing happened. The weapon was fully charged. All systems showed green. But when they activated it, the destructive energy had nowhere to go. Space-time wouldn't break. Reality refused to fracture. The universe had become solid, immutable, unchangeable. Scientist Do-hyun's pulse had done something impossible. It had reinforced reality itself. Space and time were no longer malleable. They were locked in place by a field of pure physics that humanity had learned to generate. The Vakrothian superweapon was useless. The energy in the reality fracture device needed to go somewhere. With nowhere to project outward, it went inward. The device exploded inside the Vakrothian flagship. The explosion was beyond description. It was a supernova contained in a small space. The flagship and 300 ships around it simply vanished. The blast wave should have destroyed both fleets, should have scorched every planet in the system. But Do-hyun's reality anchors held. The explosion was contained, channeled, directed away from Earth. The remaining Vakrothian ships floated in space, surrounded by the expanding debris of their own fleet. They had started with 3,000 ships. Now they had fewer than 2,000. And they still hadn't damaged a single human installation. Captain Minji watched the alien fleet drift in confusion. She felt no joy at their destruction, only satisfaction that her training had worked. That humanity's preparations had been enough. "Admiral," she said, "the enemy is disorganized. Should we press the attack?" Admiral Jiwan considered. The battle was going perfectly, too perfectly. The aliens were beaten, but they hadn't accepted it yet. They would try something else, something desperate. "Negative," Jiwan said. "Hold position. Let them think." Aboard what remained of the Vakrothian command structure, Second Commander Vroth took control. The Supreme Warlord was dead. The fleet was shattered. They had lost their most powerful weapon, and the humans had barely tried. Vroth was old, even by Vakrothian standards. He had commanded fleets for 3 centuries, He had conquered 20 solar systems. He had never been defeated. But he recognized defeat when he saw it. "Prepare for hyperspace retreat," he ordered. "All ships enter coordinates for home territory." The fleet began to turn. They would run.